Hello, everyone. Welcome. Great to see you again. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour and happy belated Thanksgiving. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving as I did as well. Hey, Carl. Good to see you, man. All right. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm using a slightly different mic setup. Okay, awesome. And, all right, interesting. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, great. Looks like everyone is arriving. Oh, Donna's fighting a cold. Oh man, sorry to hear that. Yeah, we had a bunch of sickness in our household here. My son had a fever for like a week, and then my wife was a little bit sick, and luckily it's all just sort of normal stuff. But it's always kind of annoying and scary. And interestingly enough, I've been the one that's been traveling and being exposed to sort of lots of different people. I've been in Miami, I've been in New York, and I have not gotten sick, so that's good. But yeah, so hope you all are staying as healthy as you can, and just got to take care of ourselves and be well. All right, so here's what I want to talk. Well, I'll launch into sort of like the intro this week. Of course, we're here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. For those of you tuning in on Facebook and YouTube, thanks for joining us. Each week we come here, we talk about something interesting with pianos, or bring some fascinating or expert people in the piano industry to teach us something or share something special about what they're up to. And this is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. And you can find out more about that at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. See a couple other folks are jumping in here, so just make sure and let them in. And yeah, so something that we've been doing, we had a couple guests over the past few weeks. I mean, we brought in Rick from our Castman and Sons Piano out there. I believe he's in San Francisco, and had an interesting discussion about, piano dealers, the piano industry. We also we brought in Jonathan Cleghorn to talk about this Chickering piano with a Brown action that he had worked on in Peru, and that I had come and visited him and worked on a little bit with him in Peru, and that was kind of interesting. Rick, I was going to mention, it was interesting, his perspective on the piano industry and where it's headed. He was very optimistic, and just kind of focused on the technological developments and how everything's always going to be getting better, and there's sort of always developments going on. I know he specifically deals in Steingraber pianos, which is particularly interesting, I think, from that aspect of kind of developments in piano technology. And it's a very interesting brand in the fact that it has this deep roots in history, and they try to emulate historical pianos and bring in facets of historical instruments. Pianos with like 4 different pedals, and different types of sort of tone rails that you might not typically encounter today, but might have been more common back in a different period of history with pianos. But at the same time, they're developing all new technology around pianos. They're creating ways in which sound can be transduced from a speaker, basically turning the soundboard into a speaker and playing along with the piano. And in those respects, I know Yamaha's doing some of that kind of stuff as well, or just basic stuff which nobody else had been doing very much, like taking, I think it was corrugated aluminum to create their lids for their pianos. So a ton lighter, and the manufacturing on it may be slightly more expensive than a traditional lid, but the lightness of it was actually quite advantageous. And in addition to that, they were sort of exploring those things and finding that, hey, like this may even be better for the sound. Like having a big heavy lid on a piano doesn't necessarily do you any favors in terms of the sound of the piano. So anyways, interesting stuff. I think on those levels, I totally agree with Rick that we're moving in a very interesting direction for the piano industry, and there's lots to look forward to. So on top of this, we've been exploring some of my adventures in Peru and exploring Peruvian pianos, which has been kind of fun to revisit this and kind of reflect back on the adventures that I had in Peru. And for those of you, to catch you up who haven't been in on this story, basically, I visited Peru back around 2015, 2016. My wife was at the time doing her PhD studies in anthropology, and she needed to go and live in Peru for an extended period of time to do her field work there. She is studying, you know, indigenous people, their photographic practices, some other historical pieces, recent historical pieces of the evolution of photography in Peru. And we found ourselves living in this city called Arequipa, which is the third largest city in Peru. Lima and Cusco being in front of those, Cusco being the one that probably most people visit to go to Machu Picchu because it's relatively near to Machu Picchu. And and I, had the opportunity to travel around Peru, be in Arequipa, go to visit Lima, actually get engaged with interesting characters in the piano industry and even in the government of Peru. So, we spent time sometimes at the United States ambassador to Peru's mansion in Lima, right? And sort of for some of the events that my wife and I had been invited to. She was a Fulbright scholar, and so the ambassador from the United States would host various events for Fulbright scholars and various scholars in the area. I'll bring this in on another day. I actually ended up working on the piano at the governor's mansion, or sorry, not the governor's mansion, the ambassador's residence in Lima. That was one of the pianos that I worked on, and then also through various sources, as we learned in some previous weeks, I got connected with the president of the country and the presidential palace, and got connected through the ambassador, as well as another character, which I'd love to. I think we touched upon briefly, but this very interesting character, a guy that was a diplomat from Peru, and he had traveled the world, been to like Switzerland and the United States, and many places, countries, and sort of on diplomatic missions to various countries, and just so happened to be a piano player. His I'm trying to think of his name now. Hernando Torres Fernandez. It was a very fun name to say, but anyways, he also provided me with a connection to the president, the presidential palace. So it was actually relatively close to the end of our trip where we visited the presidential palace, and there were two pianos there. One a Pleyel piano, the other a Steinway piano. And the story that they had on these pianos was that a local piano technician visited them and say, "Hey, these are kind of not worth anything." Basically, they had been gifts, been kind of into disrepair, and they should probably just get rid of them. They're just as good as garbage. So, you know, I was kind of called in. Hey, why don't you take a look at these pianos and take a second look and tell us what you think? And as we looked at them, and I'm going to share with you some more pictures because I found another source that I had pictures from. So we'll share some more about those pianos and maybe move on to a different piano story. But yeah, the general conclusion on my end was no, they're not necessarily garbage. Yes, there's some things that could be improved about them. Action mechanisms, the keyboard, the key leveling, the strings. Like actually, most things were in pretty good shape. Potentially, the biggest issue that somebody may have declared them, you know, garbage, I suppose, was there might have been some sort of a vermin or like a bug infestation in it that eaten some of the wood parts away, maybe eaten some of the bridge away, some of the soundboard away. But it didn't seem like something that you would totally get rid of the piano. So, and I don't know that I Actually, I was looking through these photos. I must have had some evidence, like some photo evidence of this problem, because I'd love to share it with you guys. I don't think I've come across it yet, but maybe we'll come across it. But what I'd love to share is just to bring you through some of these photos that I did come across. Again, I have basically just a ton of uh, an archive of photos from all sorts of pianos in Peru, and it's hard to dig through it a little bit. So I'm just going to bring this up here in my Dropbox, basically. I've tagged some of the photos that I think are interesting. And the first thing that I think we'll look at is the Pleyel piano. It's going to take me a second to search for that. But in the meantime, while that search is populating here, oh man, this always takes so long. Oh shoot! And of course, there's a mistake in the spelling. All right, give me 1 second here. Let me refresh. And try this. Yeah, I think I mentioned previously my fantasy about these two pianos in the presidential palace was to actually return with a crew of friends from the United States and basically make a trip of it. Right, we could all go there and stay for a handful of weeks and just kind of put these pianos back in order and call it a diplomatic mission. Maybe get some sort of grant or funding around it. That could be cool. I have since let go of that dream. Just there's just so many things to do. It seems like it would require a lot of planning. But if I can get a crew together, like putting the word out there, we can all get together, head down to Peru, and I think we can make this happen. All right, looks like the photos are loaded up, so I'm gonna start taking a look. So what we're gonna look at here is some extended footage of the Pleyel piano, which I came across. And it looks like I've got some extra pictures of like the action and so on and so forth. So we'll just take a better look at how things are looking. So again, take a look at that. It certainly doesn't look like a piano that's you want to put in the trash. The hammers seem they could use a little bit of filing. If you really wanted to go crazy, you could replace the hammers, but I don't even think they needed that. Nice hearty action. Of course, the felt parts, maybe I can't tell from this distance, but it looks like maybe there was some sort of like maybe a moth got in there or something like that. I can't tell if that was an issue, but again, just go ahead and replace that, no problem. Clean up the keys a little bit. Shouldn't be an issue. We did look up this piano last time. I don't know if that's the serial number or not. We grabbed the serial number, and we may see it again today in these photos. But I think this was the one. There were actually, so we had the Pleyel and we had the Steinway. And I think the Pleyel, when somebody looked it up, they said it was from quite a bit ago. I feel like previous, maybe the early 1900s. I don't think it was the late 1800s. That was the number that whoever looked it up came up with. So I don't know if that's true. We were a little bit skeptical that this piano was particularly that old. But we take a little bit of research and figure out a little more. Again, a beautiful piano, I think, with some cleaning and a bit of care and attention, could be put into pretty good shape. Beautiful case. Again, even though there might have been some bug getting in there and eating up the wood a little bit, the case is beautiful. It seems well maintained on the outside. And And again, my understanding is Pleyel was not only an instrument maker, but kind of a bit of an artiste, maybe a furniture designer, I believe. And so I think one factor, and maybe I don't know what people's thoughts are about Pleyel pianos. I think they're high quality pianos, but my sense maybe was that perhaps a little bit more attention was put into the look of it than the sort of musical quality. I don't know if anybody has an opinion on that. Not to say that they had a poor musical quality, but maybe it wasn't the pinnacle of musical quality. A little bit of a look at the pins there. Again, nothing. I've seen far worse pianos that I've recommended a customer keep and work with over the long term. Yeah, this might be. Yeah, even the back checks seem relatively good condition. Beautiful inlays and beautiful music desk. You can see certainly some issues, like this key is permanently stuck here. I think forget what the actual issue causing that was. Well, cup of tea provided, hospitality. Yeah, so even as I look back on these photos, I think everything. I really highly doubt that I tried to tune the piano and it wasn't untunable either. I think it was a tunable instrument. Uh, not like anything like loose tuning pins or pin block issues or anything like that. I think the hammer alignment. I don't know what we can say about it at this point. I mean, probably the springs are need some strengthening, so it'd be hard to tell if there's an issue here. Maybe these are all just laying on the rest rail, and that's why they look relatively straight. Had a couple strings replaced, not a huge issue. That may be the serial number 71809. Is that what we looked up last time? Sort of an interesting style to the piano, with the sort of set of four legs towards the front here, as opposed to sort of the big two big legs up the front. And maybe that is part of supportive evidence that's a little bit older piano, because I don't know that that's more as common nowadays. Maybe also just the fact that I don't know if anybody has any insights or about that either. Like um, is there something more advantageous to having one big strong leg as opposed to sort of two smaller slender ones? Maybe they're easier to break or might have issues. All right, let's see here. Okay, this is at least a slight a slightly interesting facet here. It looks like there's the damper. What we would have as like a damper spoon, right? Is sort of like a wooden, or not the damper spoon. The What do we call that? That is we call it a spoon. It's the I can't think of the name of it right now. Did anybody put anything in the comments? He's got a couple comments come in. Let's see here. Let's read through these comments and see. Number one, we have a name for that. Uh, And then number 2, what are people are saying? Okay, so Susan Klein said, I rebuilt Ted Sample's Play-El, 1926, about that size. The original string tension was very high, and they were renowned as string breakers. He had me resize the scaling, and it did a lot better. Interesting. Donna Bird said in a private message here, Ethan, in your travels and studies, have you read Noche Oscura en Lima? It's a mysterious text designed for students learning Spanish with a vocab of about 2,000 words. It's a fun study book with drawings. I've been known to share books. Ooh, that sounds interesting. No, I'm not aware of that. What pitch was it at? I do see here that I did bring out the Cybertuner. And I think I have a photo of it coming up here. I'm not sure if it had a pitch information on it, or I think I did take a photo to document something about the piano. I mean, again, in retrospect, the piano was, I don't remember measuring it and it being any more than, if it was more than 50 cents flat, for example, I'm sure I would remember it. It probably wasn't much more than 25 cents flat. The interesting thing, which I've mentioned previously about Lima, is that the conditions there are actually pretty great for pianos. It is the climate there is called a desert climate. It is on the ocean. It's on the Pacific Ocean. And so interestingly enough, you have all this water out there in the ocean, but, in order to grow things, they have to, create artificial watering of plants, heavily in order to have greenery on the ocean front and things like that. So it's sort of like an interesting mix of desert and ocean climate. But my understanding is, throughout the year, it's relatively temperate. Like the temperature doesn't actually change that much. And so, I talked to this guy, again, who maybe we'll visit some photos and some story of him either as well. His name was Anders. I forget his first name. Anders is the last name. Anders Piano. He had a piano store, one of the only sort of traditional kind of piano sales centers in Lima, Peru. And his family was German, but had been in pianos for generations and had been in Peru for generations as well. But he said, yeah, we don't necessarily need to tune pianos more than once a year because they don't go that far out, and it's not that much of an issue. So all that to say, this piano may not have ended up being, terribly out of tune because the climate doesn't shift that much there. Susan Klein asked what the serial number again is. I'm going to stop share. I'm going to see if I can find our chat from last week, if I still have it, because that will tell me. So let's go into here and Piano Tech Radio Hour. Oh, I may have uploaded it, but let me check one more time. Okay, so last week was the 20th. Is that right? Perfect. Yeah, let's open up the chat. Okay, so yes, serial number 71809. And last week, Dan Garrido said that would mean that the piano was from 1875. Pretty impressive, I think, if that piano was from 1875. Perhaps that number was some other number that we found, but yeah, 71809 was our sort of theoretical serial number for the time being. Bill Magnuson said the knuckle underfelt looks degraded and the leather loose. Okay, let's take a look. Share screen again. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah, I think that this is part of the issue. I think, if anything, the issues with this piano, it's less climate related and more, what are the organisms that inhabit that climate? So I'm wondering if somehow something got in here and found the felt to be quite delicious and caused some issues there. Um, yeah, and this is also maybe if I'm reading this, if I'm looking at this correctly. So you have an adjustment screw for the repetition lever, which seems to be somehow connected to what would be sort of this spoon for the regulation of the jack position. And it's kind of serving the multiple purposes there. If I'm viewing that correctly, and from memory here, I don't remember from memory seeing this. Um, so that's unique, and it looks like I'm trying to think. So why it's necessary for us to have a spoon mechanism, right? For that jack adjustment, right? Um, is it something that we bend? I don't think of bending that too much. And it is kind of strange because it's a little bit it's circular, so it almost encourages the misshapeing of the felt on the other end of the adjustment screw for the jack position. So yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe this is a good idea. Um, let's see what else we have in terms of comments. Bill Magnuson says, Susan says, the atlas says, but it looks somewhat later than 1875. Yeah, maybe somehow we're misreading what the serial number is. Sometimes it's hard to gauge serial numbers, and there's multiple numbers written on pianos. I think that's the rep lever height adjustment. Yeah, this is what I think this is right here, the repetition lever height adjustment, and interestingly somehow connected to this what traditionally is like a spoon here. Nancy Salmon says, is that a center pin at the bottom of the whip abstract above the capstan? Okay, so at the bottom of the whipping abstract above the capstan. So like here, somewhere around here, is that a center pin? Yeah, I don't know. What if I can zoom in on this? Let's see here. Is there a way to down here? So there's something I don't know that that's a center pin. Is this what we're talking about? Like here's a center pin, that's clear. This looks like a center pin. Or wait, yeah. The spring here is interesting, the structure of it, right? Because typically you'd have it sort of bend around and come back. And it doesn't feel like that's what's going on here. This seems like it's meant to regulate the spring tension for the repetition lever. This adjustment screw here. I mean, yeah, that's also interesting. I mean, if this piano is from 1875, there's a lot of forethought, I suppose, put into how you would make different adjustments. It's actually pretty impressive. Again, I think we're kind of skeptical of this dating on it, but yeah, I don't know what this might just be. Maybe that would be kind of interesting. Maybe it's a little pin that goes through the wood in order to secure this part onto the base of the whipping, and maybe the same thing goes here. We did see on the keys, I think of the Steinway, somebody had the awareness around, hey, they put little nails into the key covers, especially when a piano is going to a humid climate, in order to keep them connected. And it looks like perhaps there is some sort of I don't know if it's a nail or some sort of tiny dowel here with the function of just securing this, just in case the glue, starts to deteriorate or dry out or something like that. Okay, let's see some comments here. Donna says, I did run into a piano in Las Palmas, Cuba, in which the parts looked great, but when I lifted the lid of the upright, saw that the slight vermin problem was major. The tuning pins looked like they were in a sponge hanging from threads. Okay, yeah, that could be. Nancy Salmon, below that, just above the capstan. Yeah, so like here or something. Yeah, I don't know. So wait, this is clearly the capstan. It's the top of it. Then you have the sort of whip and cushion here, which interestingly does not look as, typically it would sort of curve and continue, be like more of a rounded shape, but it kind of cuts off pretty abruptly there. Um, in terms of that being a center pin, I would doubt it. It could just even be like a speck of something, or maybe the felt. Yeah, I don't think that that's a pin. Let's see here. Doug Snook said Renner makes a Schwander style whipping that looks about like this one. See page 67 in Egrek's book. Okay, cool. Should I maybe want to go grab Egrek's book right now, but that'd probably be a little unnecessary. Susan Klein, do I remember if the hammers were on long pins by section? Oh, instead of being individually movable. Ted's were like that. Had a ton of fuss spacing them. No, I don't remember that, but we might be able to tell. Um, let's see here. Let's zoom in. Oh, we could probably find a couple other photos to zoom into for this purpose as well. Let me move this thing. All right, so zoom in, and then, okay, so it's hard to tell right now if there's just one big long pin, center pin for all the hammers at this point. But it is clear that we do have some issues here in the felt. Here, let's hit the next photo, and we'll continue exploring. Okay. Okay, exterior. Got the cleaning ladies to come in and give me some assistance. I brought in their vacuum cleaner and some cloths to give it a little love. Here, let's zoom in here. It's not easy to tell exactly how the center pins are working here on the hammers. I do think that would be pretty. I mean, I guess one of the nice facets of that is it would be another force that would keep, keep the hammer flanges in a nice square alignment, which they do look like they're very well aligned here. There's also seems to be I don't think that this is an empty kind of nook at the back of the hammer flange. It looks like there's something like some sort of pin or something that really nicely holds it in place. Even compared to some modern pianos, the alignment on these um, hammer flanges look to be very, very neat and square. Let's see here. Let's hit the next one. What's this? This is probably just something. This inventory. See if we see anything interesting. So this is the other side of the action. It's a little far away, but maybe we'll see. Nice thick skin on the back check. So those are in good shape. Plenty of hammer felt. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly what this little dot is. Should I be sure? Because this is your pivot point for the repetition lever. And so if you had this somehow pinned, it wouldn't move, right? It would have to be stationary in some way. Perhaps this somehow is connected to the repetition lever height adjustment screw in some way to facilitate what that does. And perhaps there's some point of rotation underneath here, so that when you adjust the height of the repetition lever, it kind of rotates accordingly. So now you see, it looks like you have a type of spring mechanism where it's hooked to is that where it's like hooked to like a thread or a cord of some sort? It looks like that in this photo, but I may just be misreading it. It sure does look like something.
Ethan, don't you think that's the spring tail? And that's for adjusting this, for, the spring tension.
On where? So
at the
here?
back.
Here. Yeah, I think that
pin is probably for the spring tail.
Right. And then this one's for the rep lever height.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Right. That makes sense. And so what do you think? You think this spring goes straight through here, or does it?
Yeah, it goes straight through.
So how is it adjusting the tension on the spring?
It's pushing on the tail.
It's pushing on the tail of the spring. And so you can get slightly more tension by tightening it. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Let's see if we see anything else. I have to say, what is this little thing hanging out? This could be evidence of what, who said that earlier, of like sort of one long cord that's running through everything for these hammer flanges. Any thoughts on that? It certainly wouldn't be expected to have something hanging out there if it was just a pin. You'd probably see like a little circle of red felt and a piece of metal in the center.
Yeah, it's probably a continuous center pin.
Yeah, wow. It also looks like maybe it's a more flexible, maybe it's more of a cord than a pin, or I don't know. It's interesting. Here, we've got some more messages in the chat. Here, I'll go through. Renner makes a Schwander style. Susan Klein, do you remember if the hammers were on long pins by section? Yeah, that we were just checking out. Donna Bird, it seems like one of Bill G's pianos was a Pleyel that I was told was a single key, could be removed from the grand by bending back. Could it have been a damper? But I'm thinking David Betts would be the most likely person to know because most of his instruments went to Canada. Fuzzy comment, fuzzy memory. Okay. Susan Klein, looks like they weren't. Ted's had shanks inserted so that a broken shank could be replaced. Oh, like an upright. Interesting. So that's definitely not the case here. So you think this is, so actually Susan, the one who was curious if all of the hammers were sort of pinned by one mechanism, thinks that actually maybe this is not the case in this piano. So it's kind of blurry, so we don't know what that is per se. Similar whipping on page 67 of E. Gray. Very tidy action. Spring holds a spring. Adjustment screw for the spring up above. Yeah, we talked about that. Bill Magnuson. Spring loops go around that. Judy, looks like the end spring goes in. Doug Snook, I believe it attaches at the back of the spring. Bill Clayton, there's a coil in the end of the repetition spring. This looks like an old Kimball that Judy ran into. Susan Klein, one long wire. So Susan, Susan, you think maybe it was one long wire now that you get a look at this piece hanging out. Judy, let's see. Yes, that looks like the end of a very long center pin. It was an ordinary pin, but it doesn't have the inserted round shanks like Ted. So maybe it's a sort of a hybrid of those two concepts, because you have the long hammer shanks that are attached directly here to the rotation mechanism, and at the same time you have the long pinning mechanism. Yeah, imagine having to rip in a loose hammer flange. Yeah, well, yeah, I guess, I don't know, perhaps it was made to last a bit longer so you wouldn't have to. I don't know. Extremely hard to space. You have to burn them in. Okay. Yeah, cool. Good to know. I think that is something that is it's useful in approaching a piano like this, to be able to share it with others that may have encountered similar pianos, right? Because at first glance things can look simple. Then you get into the details, and there's complexities that if you don't have anybody to refer to, you have to discover them yourself. It can take a bit longer. Cool. Pedal mechanisms. Cleaning things out a little bit. Yeah, 718. What was that number? 71809. I mean, if that doesn't look like a serial number, I don't know what is. 71809. I don't know. What do we do about this? Is there any world in which we really think the piano is that old? It just seems so advanced in so many ways. Is there anybody that believes that this piano truly believes that this piano is from 1875? No, nobody. All right. Well, we have to explore further. Perhaps we can look into some of these archival logbooks, right? For those of you that were here last week, we looked and we found that in France, there's some curators who maintain logbooks of these pianos. Pleyel was one of the brands, and along with Erard was one of the brands as well that they had logbooks on. So maybe it's worth looking into the logbooks and seeing if there's some more specific information on this specific piano. Let's see here. Bill Magnuson said maybe they sawed them apart if necessary to remove one. Robert Wilson, probably a mistake on the Atlas. Yes, could be. To me, the case looks like the 1920s. Yeah, that's also good observation, Bill. It does look more like a 1920s style case. And I'm also curious, like, well, when was Pleyel prominent? Looks real to me. If a one was missing, okay, so maybe 17109 would have been 1922. Interesting. Let's take another look at that. But come on, so they just forgot to add a one. It doesn't look like anything got removed. I suppose it could have been redone, and then somebody accidentally forgot the one when they put the number back on the plate. But yeah, that is an astute potential alternative, Susan. Could be a month or date and year. 71809. Yeah, I don't know. All right, let's take a look at a few more. See what else other photos I have. And then I may have some more photos of that Steinway. So, looking at the action there. The final flange here on the hammers on this side, though, doesn't have that overhang, which is interesting. Be very hard to tell that it was one long strand. All right, moving on. Key is looking pretty solid. Everything's in good alignment. Even from 1920, that's still in pretty great shape. That's a problem. Guess it's just the grain of this particular piece of wood had some imperfection in it, I suppose, because that key is terribly off, especially compared to the other ones. This looks like post cleaning, a little bit nicer looking on the plate there. Let's look at those dampers. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't see that the dampers actually have gotten, if other felt parts got sort of eaten up a little bit. I don't know that the dampers did. They look to be in okay shape. Maybe that's a little somebody got a munch in over here. Look at that. One more time. 71809 written again on another part. Looks to be the same key. That's very crooked. Actually, this is a question. What would you do here? What would you do to fix that key? It seems like even if you rotated the pin underneath slightly, it would still be quite crooked there. Any suggestions or approaches to that when you have a key this far off?
The balance rail. Push the balance rail.
I think it's the balance rail pin.
Yeah.
Do you think that the key would still be sort of weirdly diagonal, even because it seems like if you push the balance rail pin, you tighten this gap slightly, and then you'd make this gap a little bit wider. But do you think the actual pin would rotate, or the actual key?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
Yeah. All right, there's under the keyboard. See if there's anything interesting going on here. Yeah, actually the dampers do look like they've gotten a little bit worn away. Maybe it's some moisture issues or something like that. What do we got here? Okay. Maybe that's a piano tuner. Olea Service. 2301 2014, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know. That might just be like a shipping company. I don't know. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's a piano service or not, because this looks like is that maybe a map of Peru? And then the letters OS. 23 something 2014. There's the cool logo. It's probably the crooked key.
I feel like I read long ago that the Pleyel factory was burned down in the 1848 revolution, and then they re-established it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, we got a damper missing here, it looks like. Yeah, I remember, I think the first Pleyel that I tuned was for this guy in Brooklyn, and it was a beautiful piano. it was a weird situation where I don't know if you guys have ever run into this, where the action, like the the drop screw uh was was scraping on the underside of the pin block. Has anybody ever run into that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. What's the deal with that? Wait, why?
The
So
pin block is dropping.
the pin block is dropping. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, and so it's. Is there a solution for that? Is that like literally take the piano apart and sort of reinstall the pin block?
Someone may have hit the pins and not supported the pin block.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So it has nothing to do with the expansion and contraction of parts and things like that. It's probably the pin block got jostled.
Someone's been working on this. Look at there's replacement strings in the bass. I mean, this
Mhm.
piano's and someone's been doing something to this piano.
Yeah, someone's been doing something. Not a lot. I mean, you can imagine. Carl, did you see the whole rest of the presidential palace? Did you see any of those photos? My
No.
my sense is they have a lot to take care of. There's just like all kinds of artifacts and antiques and oh
So do
my
you
gosh.
think that's a universal string that the person put in because it's not quite the right length?
It's a good question. Um, I will show maybe at some point in another session. I'll show photos from that guy that I mentioned earlier, is Anders from Anders Piano, and he had his own bass string
Oh,
winding machine. So a guy like that could have provided custom bass strings.
sure.
Um, but yeah, you're right. It could have been a universal. That's one thing that I come across in Peru is that even number one, gaining knowledge and expertise. Most people would have had to travel to a different country to do that. And then on top of that, access to parts and supplies, very difficult. So there's a lot against being able to take care of these instruments. Let's see, a couple comments came in. I don't think that key is crooked. Oh, good. Let's see what you have to say. Could be a month, date or year. Okay. Susan Klein, go to Peru to find out. What are we finding out? The date of the piano. Clark Renard said 1907 Beckstein has a very similar action Schwander. Okay. Judy said back when they took pride in their craft. Yeah, definitely that's there. Susan Klein said key button broke. Check the key button at the balance rail. Don't think that key is crooked. Think that the bushing on the balance rail is missing or broken. Okay. Cool. Interesting observation.
Mhm.
Yep. IPA said key button as well. Judy said shim on the bottom of the key, like we do if we want to build up the sides of the key. Yep. Drop screws up too high or drop screws up too high. Yeah. Robert Wilson, Chopin brought a Pleyel piano to London in the 1850s during his last visit here, and it remained sold to the parents of a people and is now part of the Cobb collection in the 1840s, not 1850s. Yeah, someone's definitely put some work in the piano here and there, but not much opportunity. Let's see, probably got a couple more of these and then we can wrap up. Nice look at the outside again. Okay, what do we got here? Here's my Cybertuner. I don't know what is that telling us? 430, 436 or 8 or something.
Yeah, it's 5 cents flat.
Not bad. Not bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that'll answer that question. I mean, clearly it was just measured a couple of notes. It could be varying different parts, but yeah, I think the tuning of it was not so bad.
4 cents. Yeah.
What do we got there? Broken string. Yeah. Yeah, the strings are a bit used up, a bit corroded. All right. Well, that's perfect. That's my last photo that I had in queue to share. I did have some more of the Steinway piano as well, but that was pretty cool. And thanks for all your input. That was fun to just kind of be a little piano investigation gang of piano investigators here. But we do have that issue to solve. I'll when we're done here, I might just see if I can quickly hop on those archives and look into this serial number thing, because that is definitely a little bit of a riddle. I think we all agree we're not buying that date of manufacture. Cool, guys. Well, thanks again for joining us, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone. We will see you again next week. I will, I believe, be back in Miami, Florida. So if anybody has any connections and pianos there they want to put me in touch with, maybe there's something interesting to do there. But I'll be logging in, and I'll see you next Saturday from warm Miami, Florida. Happy
All right.
Thanksgiving. Talk to you later.